Alright, so it's the middle of the week, kind of a thing, and we are just continuing on our assembly of many of these items that were taken out for paint. And you can see here we got the heater core, we got the top plate for the heater box, the actual blower motor itself, and I was able to test this, and I will show you. You gotta watch these because they have a lot of torque. So you want to make sure your fingers are clear. But I just have an old battery on the charge. It's a drill battery. It's an 18 volt. So you want to be kind of short with it. But set that there. And we got, of course, a negative and a positive. I'll just put a little jumper wire on there. And we just give it some ground. See that? it has a lot of torque, I'll tell you. So we know that works. We're just gonna wipe it down, clean it up good, and probably just rough up the outside and give it a shot of some black paint, or yeah, probably just do black on it. So that'll be later, and then I'll just stick this back on the charger, have a nice fresh battery to test with. So I'm kind of fooling with the piece here. This is kind of an air horn. That's what it looks like. Had a lot of grit and grime in it, so I've taken the Brillo pad and just scouring it out real good. And then we can blow it out, wipe it down, and we'll take some black paint. Actually, I need to get some fresh black paint because we're out. But we'll get like a satin black and clean this, all the residue here from the sticky stuff and the foam that is kind of dilapidated, especially right there. It's all extra crispy. So we'll try to remove this carefully and make a stencil or a template from it and get some new foam with the same thickness if we can, and just make a brand new one, and then we'll glue it in here. There's another one that goes on, I'm thinking this piece. Yes, and it is completely toasted. So we won't be able to peel this one off, but we can just use the general shape, make a template from that, and cut our little ear holes out. But this one's, it just turns to dust. So that's shot. So we'll just completely erase that, and usually these sit on a plastic film. So that'll help peel it up all as one piece. And probably the best way to take this loose, take a scraper, and just, some of them might be a little worse than others. This one looks like it's mainly just around the edge where the seal was. And you just kind of can lift it up and force it in there. And just lift it all out carefully, and you can make a template. Alright, here's the upper portion, side portion, whatever you want to call it, of the air box for the heater core. And we put like a flat paint on it and like a clear coat that's like a satiny finish. So that'll look pretty good in the engine bay when you look in there. I went ahead and painted on the inside of it after I cleaned it out. That way it kind of seals in any dust or anything that's kind of embedded in there. And you can even look at it from maybe like an allergen standpoint. You kind of seal it in and give it a fresh new surface, whereas they're built out of fiberglass, kind of a rough cut fiberglass, and that tends to be porous and it can hold a lot of dust. And even if you think you get it all out after we wiped it out with some degreaser and wax remover and all that stuff, you still might have some in there. So it's not a bad idea to go ahead and just coat it with some paint. Now here's the base of everything. This is the box itself, and it's a little messy. That's got a couple cracks in it, a little bust, but everything's intact. We can refasten that with some good glue or adhesive, but it has some other issues really. The gasket here, I wouldn't say it's terrible. It'd probably be worth replacing though, even though it's all intact. And you can see what's missing here. I went ahead and took this off, a couple of sheet metal screws, and it went on the inside kind of like that. And the problem with it is it's got a piece of rubber sandwiched in between it, and it's supposed to be like a flap. And I don't know how far it comes out since it's so far deteriorated, but if it's to fit this hole, I would imagine not a whole lot bigger than what you're seeing that gap there. So kind of aggravating because they got rivets, so I'll probably have to drill the rivets and put some screws back into place. So there's at least 6 of them here, it looks like, and hopefully that can pop apart. We can get a new piece of rubber, cut it a little bit oversized, and then sandwich it back in there with the screws, and then we can just have our flat back. Pretty much there. Now I looked up this heater core. Now we're really hoping that this one's good. It looks good. I don't see any leakage in it, any staining or corrosion. But it was over $200 if you needed a new one of these. Now that's just on Google. I don't know where specifically that come from, but I hope that's not just the standard price like if you go to the local parts store. So I'm going to get to work on this. We're going to clean it up first and then address the cracks, and then at a later date we'll deal with this. So we'll get it looking pretty first and go from there. Alright, now I cleaned this all up really good, and I'm going to attack these cracks and separations. You can actually see it really good right there, what we got. Right here I've got a little file, and what I want to do, since this was in the engine bay, it was exposed and everything, you're probably going to have a lot of that dirt that I was talking about earlier kind of stuck in this fiberglass. So what I'm going to do is groove all of this out, and I've got a couple different files here. Some of them are thin. This one's kind of a box shaped, square shape, I guess you can say. So you can start at the tip and work your way in. So you just kind of pencil that out really good, you know, a little bit of that stuff, you know. And once we get it to where we feel like we've been pretty thorough with it, we'll blow it out, and then in most cases use fiberglass. Just get you a little bit of long strand, mix it up, and then press it in there. I probably won't fool with that this time. I think I'm going to try some Pour 15 epoxy putty, and we're just going to fill it in. It's not a high stress area, so we're going to do this on a couple places. I think there, and there's like another spot, maybe there we can groove that out a little bit and just repair them this way. But this is just a basic epoxy putty that you can mix together. You knead it together, take you a little, you know, make a string out of it, and then press it in there. And then probably what we can do is we can either put a clamp on it and kind of push that in some and get a nice tight hold on it, or we can just leave it as is, because like I said, it's just a screw hole and it shouldn't hurt anything. We can do it either way. There's, you know, like I said, fiberglass, or try a putty. JB Weld will probably work something like this. So just gonna cover the bases that way, and we're gonna get working on it and try to get it done. So there's the epoxy putty. That's the result of epoxy putty. If you let it harden, so I had a little bit of extra. It's very hard. You can leave very dag. So you can literally bounce it. Okay, so it gives you a good idea how hard it gets. Okay, it's almost like a hard plastic ball. Okay, so what I did, well, here's where the crack was. Well, the first crack, I put some in here. Now I just took a file and used the finer knurl on it, and it actually takes it down nicely. Like, it's very easy to control without biting too much into the original. And then it also sands pretty good too. So I got it about where I want. I'm going to take a drill and just even that hole out to a little bit more like that one. That way we don't have a breakage or anything. And the other repair is right here. And this is what it looked like after I set it. I haven't ground it down or sanded it down yet. And I just worked it into the crack, even a little bit on the inside here, so that where it completely bonds inside of it. And then we'll take the file and do the same thing. And then of course, once you get it roughed in about how you like it, then just take your sandpaper and smooth it out to whatever flatness you want. You can go completely flat to where it looks perfect, or you can leave a little bit, or whatever you want to do. So I'd say for something like that, pretty solid. It's 415 epoxy putty. They've had this around for quite a while. This is probably the first time I've actually used it. I know people have had really good luck with it. So just a good epoxy. Like I said, JB Weld will probably work, but I'll say this stuff works pretty good. Alright, so what I have here is a few pieces of closed cell foam. I bought this at Michael's. You could probably get it at Hobby Lobby, any craft store. This is called Createology. It's a foam sheet. It's a 9" by 12" and it's about 1/4 of an inch thick. Okay, I bought 3 of these, and I'll tell you why I bought 3 in a second. This white one is about 1/8 of an inch thick. That's the same brand. Yep, got it pretty much in the same area of the store. And I'll show you what we got in mind here. So we'll put these aside for a second. I'll bring it up. Here's the other one I showed you earlier. It's not quite a closed cell. It's the more traditional foam gasket type, weather seal stuff. And it's about 1/4 of an inch. Well, they didn't have the white in 1/4 inch. And does it matter that it's white? No, but I thought, heck, why not? So we're going to take this, and they had this in a longer, wider piece. So I thought, well, that'll work. I can take this half and then fold it over like that and basically make it 1/4 inch. Okay. We'll cut it out one at a time, baste it off of this, and then we'll have our 2 pieces, okay? So that's how we're going to get that one, and that's the white sheet. This was the seal that went on the door. And when you measure it here about where it's wasn't as compressed, it comes out to about 1/2 of an inch. Well, that's why I bought 2 of these in this case, so that we could glue them together and double them up, and then you'll have that similarity there. We'll make a template of that and cut it. This one might be a little more difficult, but we could probably get it off the box, if not directly from here. Probably be better to get off of the box, since this one's so shot. It'll be this piece, the one that looks like an air horn. There's a piece that went inside of here, and although it doesn't completely cover it here, whatever we cut out, whatever we don't use, like say this corner here, we can just add that corner down here. So we'll just make a template of that, and we should have our pieces. So for this particular heater box, I got 3 of these, which are about 1/4 of an inch thick, 9 by 12 inch, and this one here, which you can double it over, and it might fall a little short, but it'll do the job. Yeah, so about a 16 by 9 roughly. So there's that. This one will be the last one we do, and that's where it needs that piece sandwiched in. That's a little bit different situation. I might use, if there's any leftover of the black stuff here, we might be able to make something out of that. It might have to be made of a more solid rubber though. So we'll show you these after they're cut and how well they fit. Now we got our gaskets made. This one was kind of double layered, and see, it didn't quite get out here. I'm not worried about it. It's just enough to get a nice gasket in there. We glued it down with some what they like to call Gorilla Snot. It's the weather stripping sealant, and it's usually that yellow stuff like that, real sticky, icky stuff. So that's on there. We went ahead and cut this one out, did the extra little piece here, so it's in good shape. And then we did this one here, which is a double there, and this is the one that meets up. Where does that meet up? Oh, that goes to the hole right there, I believe. And so we have all new seals there, here, and on this piece, which will sit down on there. Then the blower motor will set in there. We've got this painted up, and there's where one of our repairs was. So it's in pretty good shape, almost ready to go. That gasket, I think it'll work. That one is the one that seals up next to the body itself on the fender. Yeah, this rounded, it'll set up against there. And like I said, the other one will go here. Of course, when that's all done, we'll be able to put our heater core back in, paint this up, put it in. I tested that, obviously it works. Alright, now while we wait on that, I've got this here, and this is the interior side heater control box. You see it's where it makes its connection to the little window in the firewall. We're going to make a new seal there. That one's pretty limp. And we're going to clean it up, and we'll just use our Brillo pad. Really, probably might throw some paint on it, just see how good it looks. Might go ahead and take what we can apart and just see what needs cleaned out more than anything. I would imagine that's really all it needs. And it's a pretty simple box. It just stretches right across here, bolts into there, and bolts into here. So now this is really simple. Here's your little your rheostat. It'll help determine the different levels of blower that you get. And I took it apart, and it was really just the base. Here's the base. It's metal. It was originally bare, it looks like, so it didn't have any paint. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to clean it up and paint it silver. And then this just looks like a maze on the inside. And it's fiberglass. It's got a metal flap here. And the other hole for this is the pivot right on here. So when we put that together, we got to line it up. But we're going to clean it up, spray it black, and just put it back together. Like I said, paint this silver, and it'll pretty much be done. We're going to clean it up a little bit more, and then we also did the flap right here. So we'll shoot a little silver paint on that just for the sake of it. Oh, and I did get the gasket that goes in that flap. It needs to extend probably another ½ an inch all the way around. So we're going to source a piece of this rubber, and even on the inside it's kind of torn up. So we'll get a new piece and get that together, and we should be pretty much ready to go in this whole heater box situation. So Well, look at that. It's our heater box with our boiler motor, condensation tube, and it's not together yet. It's just sitting together because our heater core is still sitting here. We just got to wipe it down. Really all we need is just our gasket to fit in between the two pieces here, and then we can assemble everything for good. That's pretty much on the side right now. We're gonna probably get that maybe later today, and hopefully we can be done with that. We'll go ahead and install it. In the meantime, I think I'm gonna go ahead and deal with these wiper pivots and the wiper arms, or not the arms, but the linkage for the wipers. Now on these earlier vans, you have a kind of I think it's a brass bushing in there, whereas a lot of the probably 74 and up, you have the very common nylon bushings, which degrade over time. They'll break, and then you'll lose your wipers. So that's kind of cool in a way, I guess. I'm not sure how well they held up. Maybe that's why they replaced them, but they may have did it because it was possibly cheaper. So I'm gonna take these apart and give them a good scouring, go over real good, clean them up, because you actually do kind of see them through the cowl. So with all our fresh red paint up there, you won't be looking at a bunch of rust. So we might paint them black or something like that, but we'll just start taking them apart, see how good we can do it. Okay, now we're going to show you a good example of when to use the phosphate rust remover from Rust-Oleum or the muriatic acid. Now we tried to use the phosphoric acid type on this, and we soaked it several times yesterday and then let it set overnight. Well, after scrubbing it down and giving it another sanding, we see it's still very rusty. These don't appear to have been painted originally, so that's why you see so much pitting in it, and I think that rust really has set in since basically it was built, and that's 1972. Now the bushings still look good. They're like a copper or brass bushing in there, so they're in good shape. So at this point, and I'll step on this here, if you see this actually looks pretty clean on the inside of this thing, but the outside looks just like this one. This one's a tube and this one's just an angle piece. So we're going to transfer this over to our little temporary muriatic acid center where we have some things setting, and we're going to brush these down and give them a go. Okay.
We hope you've enjoyed the preceding short feature.